If you sweep sawdust into a contractor bag and set it on the curb, you are throwing away $955. In the fall of 1927, a sawyer named Henry Boaz kept a mill on a creek outside Asheville. Every Saturday morning he hitched the mule to a flatbed, shoveled the week's sawdust into feed sacks, and hauled it down the mountain to the livery stables, the ice house, and the grocer's smokehouse. He came back with $4.80 in his pocket, grocery money for the week. Out of the pile he would otherwise have paid a boy a dime to shovel out back and burn. But here's the twist. That same pile behind Henry's mill is fetching $955 a load right now, if you know who is buying, and almost nobody does. What Henry Boaz knew has a name, friend. It is called selling your sawdust. Not composting it, not burning it, selling it. 6 different ways to 6 different buyers out of the back of your own truck. And by the time we are done here, you will know every one of them and which one pays the most. The stake is not small. A one-man shop making cabinets, a homesteader with a chainsaw mill, a fellow who cuts his own firewood. Every one of them is throwing away between $50 and $1,000 a month right now. Not theory, not someday, cash on the barrel, this month. There is one form of it they worked hardest to make you forget, the 6th one, the one that pays the most. And it is the one that turns a nice side hustle into real money. We will build to it. By the time this is over, you will know every one of the 6 ways to turn a pile of sawdust into money. The same 6 Henry Boaz knew. The materials, the buyers, the price per bag, and the one nobody teaches anymore because there is no money in you knowing it. There are 6 pieces to doing this right. Most folks who try it stop after the first 2 because those are the easy ones and the pay is thin. The 6th piece, the one they buried hardest, is where the $955 lives. We will build to it. None of this faded because sawdust quit working. Somebody got rich the day the small mill stopped selling out of the back of a truck, and I will name them. The industrial particle board consolidators and the pelletized fuel converters who needed your pile to be their feedstock, not your income.
Before we go on, there's something coming for this country, and the news won't say a word about it till it's already on your doorstep. It comes down to one number, 3 days. That's what the stores hold for you. My grandfather Eli's pantry held a winter, and the difference was never money, it was knowing. I'm Silas Mercer, 7th generation on this ridge, and before Eli died, he made me swear that knowing wouldn't die with me. So I set it down, 904 pages of it in one book, silasmercer.shop, links below. All right, back to it.
The first piece is the one Henry Boaz hauled to the livery. Bedding. Loose sawdust, dry, softwood if you have a choice, bagged out of the pile behind the shop and sold to anybody who keeps a horse, a cow, chickens, rabbits, hogs, or a mechanic shop with a slick concrete floor and oil to soak up. You could smell it walking past the livery 100 years ago. Clean pine, and the sweet ammonia bite of a stall that has been kept right. And that smell was money. Species matters. Softwood dust from pine, fir, spruce, or hemlock is preferred for horse and cattle bedding. It is absorbent, low dust load if screened, and dries fast. Hardwood dust from oak, maple, or walnut is the wrong feed for horse stalls. Walnut is toxic to horses. Do not sell walnut sawdust for equine bedding under any circumstance. State plainly, this is the safety line. Hardwood dust is fine for beef cattle, hogs, and shop floors. Moisture target is under 20%. If the pile has been rained on, spread it on a tarp in the sun for 2 days before bagging. Wet sawdust molds in the bag, and the buyer never comes back. Run it through 1/4-inch hardware cloth stretched over a wooden frame to knock out the chips in the shavings. Buyers want clean dust, not splinters. 10 minutes with a shovel and a screen doubles what you can charge. Packaging is a feed sack. 40-pound woven poly bags are the industry standard the buyers already stack on pallets. Buy them by the hundred for about 60 cents each. Fill by shovel, tie with baling twine. The sequence is simple. Dry it, screen it, bag it, tag the species, sell it Saturday. Small stables and hobby farm folks pay $4 to $8 per 40-pound bag delivered. A pickup bed holds roughly 30 to 40 bags. A Saturday run pays $150 to $300 net. Buyers are boarding stables, 4-H parents, chicken keepers, hog and goat homesteaders, small engine repair shops, cabinet shops, and gun clubs for the trap and skeet range floor. This did not slip anybody's mind, friend. The United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service laid it out in plain black ink in their own research note. The title was Uses for Sawdust, Shavings, and Waste Chips. Sawdust and shavings had been used as fuel in boilers, in public buildings, in power plants, in domestic sawdust burners, and increasingly as feedstock for charcoal briquettes. Their own word for it was feedstock, meaning raw material somebody was buying. Then, through the late 1950s, the National Particle Board Association got itself organized. Cheap fuel oil pushed the domestic sawdust burner out of the basement. The whole truckload sawdust market got vacuumed up into consolidated industrial contracts. The small mill side sale, Henry Boaz's Saturday route, did not get outlawed. It just got underbid, and then it got forgotten. Eli wrote in his journal about hauling dust to 2 stables and an ice house right up through the 60s. By the 80s, my father's generation had quit doing it. Not a conspiracy, neighbor, just how markets work. The particle board plants and the pellet mills needed cheap tonnage, and they signed the whole truckload contracts with the big mills. Nobody forbid you selling sawdust out of the back of your truck. It got forgot because there was no money in teaching you and a great deal of money in you paying somebody else for bedding that used to cost your grandfather nothing but an hour and a shovel. Miss the walnut rule and you will poison somebody's horse. Miss the moisture rule and your buyer opens a moldy bag and calls the next mill instead. Neither one is optional. Today, the tack shop sells you a compressed bag of the same dust for $18, and if you have been buying it that way, friend, that is not on you. They are good at selling. This week, call 3 boarding stables inside 20 miles. Ask what they pay for bedding, and ask if they would rather pay you $6 a bag for pine delivered. 1 phone call, 3 answers, and you know if the business is on your road. That is the easy money, bulk and cheap. The next piece is where the price per bag jumps 3-fold, and it is the one every garden center in the country is buying from somebody. Might as well be you. Piece 2, mulch. Same pile, different buyer, triple the price. Every garden center from here to the next state line stocks bagged mulch and soil amendment, and somewhere in the back somebody paid a truck to deliver it. Your grandfather's mother spread it around her tomato beds, aged and dark, and never called it anything but the pile. But the garden center calls it organic hardwood mulch and prints a barcode on the sack. Species matters, different rules than bedding. Hardwood dust from oak, maple, or hickory is the premium mulch. Dark color, slow to break down. Softwood dust works too, but grays faster. Never sell fresh cedar or fresh walnut as mulch. Cedar oils suppress seed germination, and walnut releases juglone, which kills tomatoes, blueberries, and half the vegetable garden. Sell those 2 only as bedding or briquette feedstock. Fresh sawdust robs nitrogen from the soil as it decomposes. The solution is to age the pile for 6 to 12 months in an open windrow turned once a month with a shovel or a tractor fork loader, or sell it labeled for pathways and weed suppression only because path use does not care about nitrogen tie-up. Age it, bag it, print a label, charge 3 times what the bedding gets. The upgrade is inoculated compost sawdust. Layer sawdust with grass clippings, chicken manure, or coffee grounds. Any garden center or coffee shop gives grounds away by the 5-gallon bucket. Turn weekly for 8 weeks. You now have a nitrogen-balanced sawdust compost that sells at the garden center for $12 a cubic foot bagged. Cost to make is your time and a bucket of coffee grounds. Packaging is 2 cubic foot poly bags, the standard mulch bag size. Buy blank bags in bulk online for about 80 cents each. A simple screen-printed logo runs $200 for 500 bags and instantly turns a pile into a brand. Buyers are independent garden centers. Skip chain stores because they are locked into national suppliers. Landscapers by the pallet, farmers market booths, and the sleeper are mushroom growers and urban homesteaders on internet marketplaces. Price is $6 to $12 per 2 cubic foot bag. A pickup load, bagged, is $400 to $700 gross. Eli wrote about this in '52. He had been laying aged sawdust 3 inches deep around his tomatoes since before the war, and he wrote in the journal I have in front of me, "Sawdust, aged 1 full winter, turned twice, laid 3 fingers deep, holds moisture through August drought, and I have not weeded this bed in 6 weeks." That is not romantic memory. That is a working man writing down what worked. And the modern soil science backs him. Aged wood residue is one of the highest carbon soil amendments a small grower can produce for the cost of turning a pile. Sell fresh sawdust as mulch, and the customer's tomatoes yellow inside a month, and they will tell every neighbor. Age it or label it path only. The big box mulch aisle is locked up by 3 or 4 national dye and bag operations that buy their raw feedstock by the rail car. Your competition is not the man down the road. It is a corporate contract, and it does not care about your county. That is why the independent garden center is your buyer. They have been shut out of the same aisle you have. This week, start 1 aged pile. Grab 5 buckets of coffee grounds from the shop on the corner. They hand them out free. Layer them with your sawdust. In 60 days, you have a product. That is mulch. Now watch what happens when you press that same dust into a brick instead of bagging it loose. The United States Department of Agriculture measured what it burns like, and the number will surprise you. Piece 3. Briquettes. A brick of pressed sawdust that burns hotter than most of the firewood you have split, stores in a garage without rot, and pays for itself in 1 cold snap. My grandfather Eli used to sit in the shop and press a batch on a rainy October afternoon. The whole cabin smelled like fresh pine, and the hydraulic press hissed like a tea kettle. 2 press options. A do-it-yourself hand lever press is about $80 in scrap steel and a 20-ton bottle jack, with plans available from any decent metalworking forum. It makes 6 to 10 briquettes an hour. A small hydraulic briquette press runs $800 to $2,500 used from industrial online marketplaces and makes 40 to 80 per hour. Start with the hand press. The binder question. Sawdust alone will press but crumble. Cornstarch slurry at 5% by weight is cheapest and food safe. Waste paper pulp at 10% works if you soak newspaper 24 hours, mash, and mix in. If the sawdust is fresh from softwood, the natural lignin binds under enough pressure and no binder is needed. Test which your press achieves. Moisture content for pressing is 12 to 18%. Dry too far and it crumbles. Too wet and it will not hold. Air dry pressed briquettes on a rack out of rain for 2 to 3 weeks. Do not stack until fully cured or the middle bricks stay damp. Buyers are wood stove households in your county. Camping supply stores as a great alternative to charcoal. Amish and Mennonite communities who cook and heat with wood. And folks with backyard pizza ovens and smokers. Price is 75 cents to $1.25 per briquette retail, or $8 to $12 per 10-pack bagged. Cured briquettes store 5+ years in a dry garage. A shelf-stable inventory, which is the whole game. Press, cure, stack, sell in October. The Forest Service ran the numbers on this residue to fuel pathway, and their published research, modern, peer-reviewed, still on their website, pegs briquette calorific values in the range of 10.04 to 13.03 megajoules per kilogram. In plain English, a well-pressed sawdust briquette carries about 70% of the heat energy of the same weight of good seasoned hardwood, at maybe a third the storage volume and none of the splitting. In 2024, they published a success story on woody biomass briquettes being manufactured and sold under an active federal program. That is not old-timer nostalgia. That is their own agency this year saying this works. Press wet and your briquette turns to oatmeal in the stove. Cure poorly and the middle ones mold. The recipe rewards patience, and patience is the whole trade. The pellet mill down the highway makes the same product on a rail car scale and sells it back to your neighbor in a 40-pound plastic bag for $6, which is fine. They are honest about what it is. But that pallet at the hardware store started as sawdust the mill was not paying anybody for. Ask yourself who is making the margin and whether it might as well be you. You have been buying the bag, so has half the county. Not your fault. This week, gather your sawdust, weigh out 5 pounds, mix in a 1/4 pound of cornstarch and water to make a stiff dough. Pack it into a soup can with holes punched in the bottom. Press with a broomstick and a bathroom scale. You are looking for at least 80 pounds of force. Sun dry it for 10 days. Burn it. You have made your first briquette for $1 and change. That is fuel. But your grandfather sold the same pile as an insulator and a packing material, and it kept a whole industry running that most folks today have forgotten existed. Pattern break, neighbor. Everything I have told you so far, bedding, mulch, briquettes, your great-grandfather could have taught you between chores on a Saturday morning. What is coming next is the piece the industrial buyers really did not want you thinking about, because they need this feedstock cheap and steady, and you selling at retail out of your shop ruins the math on their whole operation. Piece 4, packing and filler. Before styrofoam peanuts and bubble wrap and blown insulation, sawdust filled every gap in this country. Ice boxes were packed with it. Glassware crates were bedded in it. Walls were insulated with it. And the ice house in every town from Maine to Georgia kept a season's worth of ice cold through August because sawdust wrapped every block. Walk into any old farmhouse with plaster walls and knock on the north side. Half the time, you are knocking on a sawdust and lime insulation layer that has been there since the 1890s. Modern packing use is alive. Small batch shippers on internet craft marketplaces, ceramics artists, pottery studios, glass blowers, brewery bottle packers, and antique dealers all need dry, clean, uniform packing material. Sawdust, screened, kiln, or air-dried to under 10% moisture and bagged in clear 2-gallon bags, is a premium, biodegradable alternative to peanuts. Charge $5 to $8 per gallon bag. Cold storage packing is still a live market. Ice cream makers, small dairies, and shellfish shippers use dry sawdust as an insulating layer around gel packs and dry ice. One shellfish company I know pays a Vermont mill $2,200 a month for kiln-dried packing sawdust delivered. Insulation filler is real. Small builders restoring historic homes need period-correct insulation. Sawdust lime borax mix, roughly 8 parts sawdust, 1 part hydrated lime, 1 part borax, is a legitimate historic restoration product. The borax is the fire retardant and the insect deterrent. Sell to preservation contractors and old house restoration firms. Novelty and craft is a market. Wood turning shops, kids' science kits, and orchid growers all pay retail for small bags of specific species sawdust. Cedar shavings for closets and hamster bedding are a whole retail category, and cedar dust from your lumber pile is the same product. Screen, dry hard, bag small, sell to shippers, restorers, and closet makers. I am not going to pretend this is Bunker and Bean's doom talk, friend. This is just thrift your great-grandmother would have called common sense. And on the safety side, sawdust in bulk is combustible. Wood dust inhaled long-term is a real occupational risk, and walnut is poison to a horse. I am not your safety officer, and I am not the vet. Wear a mask. Store bagged product away from flame. Know your species. Then go make money. The insulation use is not folklore, and it is not lost. Building science surveys of pre-1930 farmhouses across New England and Appalachia routinely find sawdust lime cavity fill still doing its job 130 years in. And here is the tell. The reason your generation does not know this is that home economics and shop class, where a boy learned about house construction and a girl learned about household economy, got quietly cut down through the 70s. By 1971, most public schools had already dropped the small farm and small household economics track that would have taught you what your pile of sawdust was worth. The knowledge did not die, the teaching of it did. Sell damp sawdust to a potter and their glaze cracks. Sell it unscreened to a shipper and their customer opens a box full of chips and complaints. Dry hard and screen fine. That is the whole discipline. The styrofoam peanut manufacturer sells you a bag of oil-based plastic for $11 that lasts one shipment and then sits in a landfill for 400 years. Your sawdust does the same job, biodegrades in a season, and costs the shipper less. You would think that market would be obvious. It is not, because nobody is out there telling the shippers you exist. That is your job. This week, search for ceramic mug sellers online and message 5 of them. Ask what they pay for packing material and offer them a trial gallon bag at cost. One yes gets you a repeat customer for a year. That is packing. Now, the sale I want to tell you about next is the one nobody expects, because the buyer wears a suit and works for a mechanic shop, a marina, or a factory floor, and they have been paying 20 times what you would charge for the exact same shovel of dust. Piece 5. Absorbent. Every mechanic shop, every marina, every small factory floor, every bus depot, and every restaurant kitchen in this country needs to soak up spilled oil, spilled fuel, spilled grease, spilled coolant, spilled milk, spilled anything. And they buy it by the bag, by the pallet, by the drum from a commercial supplier at prices that will make your teeth hurt when you see them. The product is dry, coarse-screened sawdust. Medium coarse because you want it to absorb, not to dust up. Hardwood is preferred because it is denser and absorbs more. Kiln dried to under 8% moisture is best. Air dried under 12% is acceptable. Packaging is 50-pound heavy-duty poly bags with a clear label. Brand it. Even a stamp with a shop name and phone number turns a pile into a business. Buyers stack them on pallets and expect a consistent size. The killer feature is natural absorbent. Commercial oil dry is often clay-based bentonite, which is heavy, dusty, and disposal problematic. Sawdust is lighter, biodegradable in many cases, and for non-hazardous spills, burnable after use. That is a selling point. The safety line, say it plain. Sawdust that has absorbed petroleum, solvent, or fuel is a fire and disposal hazard. Do not sell it for use on gasoline, and instruct buyers in writing that oil-soaked sawdust must be disposed of per local hazmat regulations. This protects them, and it protects you. Buyers are independent auto repair shops because chains buy corporate and independents buy local. Boat marinas, small manufacturing floors, feed mills, industrial kitchens, and the surprise, municipal highway departments who buy absorbent for road spills. Commercial oil dry retails at $15 to $30 per 50-pound bag. You come in at $10 to $14 delivered, and you win the account. A pallet is 40 bags. One shop account is $400 to $550 a month, steady. Dry hard. Coarse screen, 50-pound bags. Undercut the chain by $4. Deliver Wednesdays. Modern review literature, the peer-reviewed environmental engineering journals, confirms sawdust remains a viable low-cost adsorbent, actively studied for wastewater treatment, oil spill remediation, and heavy metal capture. This is not a fringe idea. This is current science affirming what a mill hand in 1927 already knew. Dry wood dust drinks up spills better than most anything you can buy in a bag. The government still calls it feedstock. Ship a wet bag, and it molds on the shelf, and the shop switches back to the chain supplier. Consistency is the whole account. Same size, same dryness, same delivery day. The commercial absorbent industry is a $2 billion market, and about half of it moves through 3 national distributors. They are not villains. They are businesses. But they built that market on the assumption that no local shop would show up with a 5-gallon bucket price and a Wednesday route. Prove them wrong. The garage down the road has been paying $28 a bag for 8 years and never questioned it. That is not stupidity. That is a market that never introduced them to an alternative. This week, visit 2 independent mechanics. Bring 1 sample bag, dry, screened, labeled. Ask what they currently pay. If it is over $15 a bag, and it almost always is, quote them 12 delivered on the 1st of the month. You will have your first commercial account inside a week. That is the industrial sale, and it will fund the whole operation. But the last piece, piece 6, is the one that turns everything I have told you tonight into real money. It is the one they buried hardest, and it is what pays $955 for a load. Pattern break. 5 pieces down, the next one, and the one behind it, because there is one more layer past that, is where this stops being a side hustle and starts being a wage. This is the piece the pellet mills and the particle board plants really needed you not to find out about, because if you find this out, their whole supply chain has a leak. Piece 6, bagged smoking wood. Hickory, mesquite, apple, cherry, oak, pecan. Every barbecue enthusiast, every backyard smoker, every competition pit master in the country pays retail for a 2-pound bag of the exact wood residue that comes off your bandsaw or your firewood pile. And the hardware store, the sporting goods aisle, and every internet barbecue seller is stocked with it. This is a species-specific sale. That is the whole game. Generic sawdust is worth pennies. Species-tagged sawdust, 100% hickory, 100% apple, 100% post oak, is worth dollars. The buyer must trust the label. Chip size for smokers is different than dust for cold smokers. Two products from the same pile. Smoker chips are 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch pieces. Screen and keep the larger fraction. Cold smoke dust is the fine fraction that passes through the 1/4 inch screen, the exact stuff you were throwing away. Cold smokers, cheese smokers, salmon smokers, sausage makers pay retail for the fine dust. Species harvesting is the discipline. Save cutoffs by species. When you cut hickory firewood, keep the hickory dust separate. When a customer brings in an apple tree branch for a project, that is a product. Label the bin. Kiln dried is the premium standard, under 8% moisture. A cheap solar kiln, an insulated plywood box with a black painted metal roof, dries a batch in a week of sun. This is the step 99% of hobby sellers skip, and it is the step that unlocks the premium buyer. Packaging is small, clear poly bags, 1 pound, 2 pound, 5 pound, with a printed label. Species, weight, kiln dried, a shop name, and a website. Retail ready. Buyers are local hardware stores, the independent ones because chains lock into national suppliers. Butcher shops, farmers markets, competition barbecue circuits, and direct-to-consumer through a simple website. Price is $4 to $8 per 2-pound retail bag. Wholesale to a hardware store is $2.50 to $3.50 a bag, and they mark up to $6. Segregate by species, screen coarse and fine, kiln dry, bag by weight, label loud. The barbecue and smoking market in this country is a $5 billion annual industry, and the wood fuel segment of it has grown every year for the last decade. That is not old-timer romance. That is contemporary market data. Grocery store data, hardware chain data, direct-to-consumer data. And every one of those bags started as somebody's cutoff pile. The government's own biomass utilization briefs, the same body that put out the Sawdust research note, treats species-specific hardwood residue as a market category worth tracking. This works today. Mislabel the species, and one review on the internet ends your business. This trade is trust-based. The pitmaster tastes the difference between hickory and pecan the first bite in. The bagged smoking wood aisle at the big box store is stocked by 2 or 3 national brands who buy their wood residue from the same big mills that stopped selling to the small buyer 60 years ago. Same feedstock, 3 markups, 1 aisle. And if you are already buying it at the store, friend, that is on them for being good at merchandising, not you. This week, walk into the closest independent hardware store, ask the owner what they currently pay wholesale for bagged smoking wood, and bring back a labeled sample. Half the time, they have been wanting a local supplier, and nobody has asked. That is piece 6. 6 pieces, 6 markets. But there is one form of this, the form that took a Vermont mill hand from side money to a full-time wage, that I have been holding back for a reason. The $955 per load is not in the hardware store. It is one layer deeper. That is next. Come back with me to Henry Boaz outside Asheville in 1927. That $4.80 he brought home every Saturday, in today's money, about $85 a week, $4,400 a year, out of a pile everybody else was burning. Henry was not clever. Henry was not lucky. Henry knew what his pile was worth to 6 different buyers on 6 different routes, and he ran the routes. The reason the man made grocery money and everybody else made a smoke plume is he did not sell sawdust. He sold 6 things that happened to be sawdust. Here is the one I held back, the $955 for a load. It is not the loose bedding sale. It is not the mulch. It is not the briquettes, the packing, the absorbent, the hardware store smoking bag. Those are the 6 pieces. This is the multiplier. Kiln-dried, single species, direct to end user, in 5-pound and 10-pound retail bags, sold through a simple website and a Saturday farmer's market booth with the mill name printed on every bag. Not to the hardware store's wholesaler, to the pit master, to the artisan cheese smoker, to the mushroom grower who is inoculating oak dust with shiitake spawn, to the leathersmith cold smoking a hide, to the sausage maker in a suburb 3 states away who found you on the internet. Same pile behind Henry's mill, same 6 forms, but you own the last mile, the label, the website, the direct sale, and the middleman's margin comes home to your pocket. A pickup bed of bagged, species-tagged, kiln-dried smoking dust sold retail direct moves for $955 in one weekend in cash from a pile the sawmill down the road is still shoveling into a burn barrel. The pellet plant needed you not to know. Now you know. This was never about a pile of dust behind a shop. It was about being the man who looks at what everybody else is throwing away and sees the week's grocery money. It is about a father teaching a son the same trick his own father showed him, that the world is full of value nobody has bothered to name yet, and the people who name it first eat well. Henry Boaz did not get rich. Henry Boaz stayed free, fed his family off a pile of dust, owed nobody. That is the trade. You do not have to do all 6 this month, friend. Do 1. Start Saturday. Take the pile you have right now, screen half a shovel through hardware cloth, bag it in a feed sack, and drive it to one boarding stable inside 20 miles. $6 a bag, 10 bags, $60 in your pocket by lunchtime. That is the whole first step. Your granddad knew this too. Somebody just did not get the chance to pass it down to you. That is what I was here for tonight. I ran a Saturday route out of my own shop one winter and never regretted an hour of it. Tell me down below, did your grandfather or your dad sell sawdust out of the shop? Did they haul it to the ice house or the livery or the smokehouse? Did they do it different up your way? The skill that gets the most comments in the next few days is the one I go deep on next, a skill that fed families for 200 years, almost gone. Now you are one of the keepers. Next time, the $2 pantry skill that put a whole industry out of business, and the year they made sure you would forget it was ever there. Keep the old ways. They kept us.